Good morning everyone, Pierre speaking. It's Tuesday morning, it's the 27th of June 2017. Time is about 8:30 GMT time when I made this video clip. Please take note of the charts this morning, loads of daily charts that we need to flip to get the trading zones, and I will explain to you guys in the video why. Starting off with the Euro US dollar daily chart, if we look at the direction indicator, we can see we mixed. Last week we closed 6 pips lower in the opening. The direction on the daily is still long. So we were very flat last week on the 4 hour. It's mixed. So we will have to flip the daily chart to get the Earth and Sky trading zone. If we do that, we flip from the bottom of the previous month to the high that we've got this month. Then we've got a zone starting at 1069 coming down to 0954. In the trading zone, we've got only a pivot point there and a psychological level. However, if we add a 38.2 FIP, then that holds hands with the monthly main pivot point, psychological level 55 EMA coming up, and we've got also a 200 EMA in this area here, which is the 4 hour 200 EMA. So this is our first roadblock, starting at 1137, coming down to 1092 for possible longs. Now we can see last week we touched that level and we moved up, but as I said on Friday, volume momentum is still very low on this one, so take care. If the 55 breaks, be careful, we can come down to the monthly pivot point in this area here at 0954. This daily 200 EMA will move up as the week progresses, so let's have a look at that. And that can be the next support level at 0954 if the 55 EMA breaks, and that will be the next area where I want to go long. Taking counter trades, 1299 will be an area and 1396. Drop to the smaller time frames, wait for confirmation before you just get in. Now as Mark told us, US dollar CHF, this pair is negative correlated with the Euro US dollar. So keep an eye on this as well if you want to trade the Euro US dollar. If we want to go long, then this one needs to get to this roadblock area and give confirmation to short. We can see this is a perfect example of negative correlated charts. If you look at this one, that basically looks the same. It's just flipped. Now yeah, everything tells us that we need to look for shorts. Last week we closed 40 pips lower than the opening, but we mixed on the daily, so we will flip that from previous month from the high to the low to get a zone starting at 9852 going up to 9972. In the zone we've got a psychological level and a 200 EMA. But before we get to the zone, like the Euro US dollar, if we add a 38.2 FIP, then there's a 200 EMA there, a 55 EMA, Bollinger Band, psychological level, pivot point. So this can be a roadblock area, 8757 going up to 8786 for possible short setups. Euro JPY 4 hour chart. Why 4 hour chart? We had a nice big push since yesterday. We're trending up. Everything is green here. This is what I want to see. So we can flip the previous week on the 4 hour from the bottom to the top. Then we've got a zone starting at 124.51 coming down to 124.08. In the zone we've got a big pivot point, which is the weekly main pivot point. We've got a 55 at 124.29. So that will be my areas where I want to go long. Also take note of 124.51 if we look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance. So that will be the main areas to go long. If we break to the downside forever, be careful, as we can go and visit the mother-in-law's dining room table to go and have supper there at 123.69. If we look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance, and that can be our next support level to go long if this 55 and weekly main pivot point doesn't hold. Now yesterday I said to you guys I'm keeping my eyes on this one for possible counter trade. We were at this level here, it was a psychological level, weekly pivot point, price broke to the upside, but look how it touched 125.37. so that will be a key area for us, and we can today maybe have another push up, so re-look for possible counter trades on this one. Let's just go to the 1 hour chart. Look at this pin bar at the weekly pivot point, and then we had the drop. We have a little bit of MACD divergence. Let's have a look here. Yeah, a little bit of MACD divergence. So this one possible counter trade that can set up. Euro pound daily chart. Why the daily chart? We are very low. Last week we closed 18 pips higher, so we were flat. Daily 4 hour, everything shouts to look at longs. I decided to do the daily chart because of this 18 pips. If we flip from the bottom to the top, then we've got a zone starting at 8623 coming down to 8502. In the zone, we've got a 200 EMA psychological level and the monthly pivot point. However, loads happening at the 38.2 FIP, and as I said previously, a 38.2 FIP doesn't mean anything if we don't have multiple reasons with it. Here we had a 38.2 FIP, there's a 55 EMA, there's a Bollinger Band, there's a psychological level, there's a 4 hour 200 EMA, there's previous support resistance. Now that is multiple reasons. So this can be the first roadblock for possible long setups. Currently, it looks like we are trapped in a triangle on this one. Okay, so take note of that. Possible counter trades, 8858. I will re-look at that. Pound US dollar 4 hour chart. Yeah, it looks a little bit different. The daily chart is mixed up. Last week we closed 28 pips lower. The 4 hour tells us still to short. Now this here is the 4 hour 200 EMA. While that 200 EMA holds there, my bias will be to short. Yeah, we can flip the 4 hour. As I said, it's mixed on a daily, but 4 hour tells us to look for shorts. We flipped previous week from the high to the low. Then we've got a zone 2708 coming down to 2764. In the zone, we've got a 55 EMA, weekly pivot point, and then this 200 daily EMA at 270. What's that? 2751 area. Okay, so take note of that area. We already burned there yesterday at 2751. If we break to the upside for some reason, also take note of the 2773, 2789 areas for possible short setups on this one. Counter trades 2624, and then this level here 2595. Why? Because it's last week's low area, psychological level there too. If you look at the pound JPY daily chart, now look at this. First go to the pound US dollar, short on the 4 hour, mixed on the daily. If you go to the pound JPY, long on the 4 hour and mixed on the daily. Now my bias is on this one is still to look for short. Okay, so if we stick on the daily chart and we flip previous month from the high to the low, then we've got a zone 143.43 going up to 145.80. In the zone, psychological level and a weekly monthly main pivot point. But here at the 38.2 FIP, we've got a cluster of EMAs here. Let me see if I can get hold of my box. No, in any case, we sit with a cluster EMAs here, starting at 141.49, going up to 142.10. Okay. Price is struggling there. We can see we had previous support resistance there, and then last week we burned there. We're back at that level, so keep your eyes on that for possible short setups. If we drop down to the 4 hour chart, look at that. Price is definitely struggling there. Stochastic is overbought. I will prefer if we can go to the downside and maybe break this 200 and this 55 EMA to the downside first, before I will get excited to short or to look for shorts on this pair. Aussie US dollar daily chart. Here I'm going to flip the daily chart. Reason for it is that last week we closed 47 pips lower than the opening, so we were trending down on the 4 hour, but the trend is still up, the main trends. So if we flip the daily chart from the bottom to the top, then we've got a zone starting 7482 coming down to 7406. Not a lot happening in the zone except the monthly pivot point. If we add a 38.2 FIP, things are starting to look better. Multiple reasons. We've got two 200 EMAs there, a 55 EMA, a 54 EMA, and if we look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance. So 7523 will be a big support area for us to re-look to long this pair. Possible counter trades 7635 and 7664. Back down to the 55 EMA and then the monthly pivot point there. Aussie JPY daily chart, same thing here guys. Remember, it's positive correlated with the Aussie US dollar. Last week we closed 32 pips lower than the opening. Everything, however, still tells us that we need to look for longs. If we flip the daily chart, we will do that. We flip from previous month's low to the current high. Then we've got a zone starting at 83.43 coming down to 82.61. Just before the zone at a 38.2 FIP, these EMAs will move to the upside. We will have multiple reasons at 83.82. Monthly pivot point, 38.2 FIP, 55 EMA, 4 hour 200 EMA, previous support resistance. So keep your eye on that area there for possible long setups. Counter trades, look at it at 85.08. If that breaks to the upside, 85.63 for possible move down back to 84.16. US dollar JPY daily chart. Here everything is mixed on the daily. 4 hour tells us to long. Last week we closed 28 pips higher than the opening. Now this can be an M2 trade where we had resistance, price broke to the other side, pulled back, had the support, and then the set off here, guys. However, I am a little bit wary with longs. Stochastic is overbought, MACD is flat, and if we look at the US dollar index, we are still underneath 97.87, which is a big resistance level for me. So if that gives the resistance, the dollar can drop. That means that the dollar here can break to the downside. So my bias at this stage is still to look for shorts. I will flip the daily chart from the high to the low. That will be the zone. However, I want price to clear this level. 11113 to the downside first, pull back, M2 short setup, so that can follow maybe the index. Okay, US dollar CAD daily chart. Yeah, everything tells us that we need to short. However, last week we closed 44 pips higher than the opening on the 4 hour chart, so we can't flip the 4 hour. It was trending up on the 4 hour. We will have to flip the daily from a high to the low. Zone starts at 3478 going up to 3655. In the zone, nothing really happening except the psychological level, a monthly pivot point, and a Bollinger Band bit of previous support resistance. But this is a first roadblock starting at 3353 going up to 3401. We've got a daily 200 EMA there, a 4 hour 200 EMA, a 55 EMA, psychological level, previous support resistance. So keep your eyes on that. Currently, no man's land. Possible counter trades, look at 3151 for possible support there, and then a move back up again. US dollar index daily chart, 4 hours mixed. Last week we closed 11 pips higher than the opening. We were trending up, although it was only 11 pips. So we mixed. We need to flip the daily still. Main trend is still down. If we do that, we flip from the high to the low. We've got a zone 98.08 going up to 98.98. In the zone, we've got a 200 EMA, a monthly pivot point. However, we've got problem areas starting at 97.54 going up to 97.87. Okay, we've got EMAs there, we've got a 38.2 FIP there, we've got previous support resistance where price touched now twice in the 2 months there, struggling to break this level, 97.65, clearly to the upside, big level this, 97.87. So while that level holds, bias is to short. Even if we do break to the upside, this needs to break first for me to the upside at 98.84 before my bias will shift to long the dollar again. That's it. Have an awesome one. Any questions, please pop in at the forum and I can help you there. Cheers.